Welcome. Thanks so much for joining me. So I'd like to discuss the idea of roles. Um, this is something I've given a lot of thought to, and I'm constantly updating in my life. The roles I explicitly play in other people's life, like being a father, a brother, partner, etc. The roles I take on consciously, right? And the roles that maybe I don't even know I'm playing that I'm not aware of. And so I think this is a juicy topic, at least for me. Hopefully it becomes one for you, because through understanding our roles, I believe we can have more agency in how we affect ourselves and others in our life. We can have more agency in being, I guess, a beneficial person in society and to others, and more beneficial to our families. And of course, the hidden benefit of this is we become more happy. We become more content because we voluntarily take on that role instead of fighting a role that maybe we're struggling with. Additionally, I think there's also a whole area here when we're talking about roles where, some are just imposed on us by the modern world, by modern society, and especially the idea of autonomy. And autonomy is a really popular idea because we all like to make our own choices. We don't like when other people make choices for us. But when we have endless choices, we also can have endless stress about those choices. A good example is walking into a large grocery store and you just want ketchup, and you have to choose between 10 different brands of ketchup, right? So in the modern world, we would say, oh, great, freedom of choice, I don't know, free market capitalism, et cetera, right? And it's not like that's all bad, but this can create additional stress because we have to think, we have to sit there and decide which ketchup we want, right? So again, I'm not going to argue too much for sort of like, again, we can get into sort of political ideas here. I'm not really here to talk about that. But I do think there's an issue. There's a teacher of mine who once said he's from Tibet, and he really saw that in the West, that, the community, the social structure, the village doesn't really dictate your life in the West as much as it does in other cultures, where you might have 4 or 5 choices for what kind of work you wanted to do or what kind of role you want to play in your community, where he's from. And in the West, you have endless choices. We can essentially be whatever we want. And again, I'm not saying that's all bad. I've benefited from that in a lot of ways. But at the same time, I've noticed it causes stress because I could always sort of doubt, am I doing the right thing? Should I do something else? Instead of just accepting my role, accepting where I'm at. There are some examples where we don't have a choice. So, for instance, being a parent. When we're a parent, we do it, right? And you just, the impact of not taking the responsibility of that. It's going to be so heavy on another human being. And we have instead the choice to take that role on and really help to cultivate and grow more healthy human beings in the world, right? So actually we need more parents taking responsibility to cultivate really healthy human beings, right? So it's just one example where that we can have a lot of impact with a role, even though it seems small, because we're not, the president of a country or, a famous person or whatever. But actually, sometimes these smaller responsibilities and altruistic roles we can take can actually have larger impacts, piece by piece, drop by drop. So anyways, so we have these different ideas of roles. And first off, before going into the social one, which I already mentioned, sort of the modern dilemma of having so many choices, I think when I look at roles in my life, I want to become conscious of not only the roles that I'm explicitly taking on, such as, being a meditation teacher, et cetera, being a father, brother, partner, but also the ones that I'm implicitly taking on. And what I mean by this is the unconscious ones that are driving me towards certain behaviors or certain ways of being in the world, right? So these can be a little more emotionally driven, right? So as an example, I'm a big fan of preserving nature, right? As I'm sure you are as well. And so when I see people destroying it, right, or taking advantage of it or not respecting it, I get angry. And when I get angry, I can be not so skillful, right, at sort of, how I engage with them. I mean, usually I don't engage that much anyways. I mean, I don't go and yell at someone who's throwing trash, but it does irk me. And this is one of those examples of something that's hidden that's driving a behavior. So my emotion of anger comes because I'm not realizing, oh, there's this implicit role of being a steward of nature, right? So where I'm going with this is when we recognize based on our emotional content and our reactions, oh, I'm sort of taking on a certain role based on what I believe. When those become explicit and conscious, when we take those roles on consciously, I'm not saying you have to, go out and get a uniform and a hat to be a steward of nature or officially, stamp yourself and then you can go kind of rant at everybody who doesn't respect nature. That's not my point. My point is actually we get to understand our emotions. We get to understand what drives us and why it drives us. And then we could be much more skillful with how we hold our emotions. I mean, hold them in compassion, not hold them in sort of suppression, but hold them in compassion. How we hold others, right? Because one thing I've noticed in the area that I live is besides some farmers who are here, most people don't think of nature as something to take care of so we can enjoy. It's sort of a little bit more of, oh, that's this thing that I don't need, or to be, the land to be bought to build something or exploited in some way. And by exploited, I don't mean in a harsh way, just, used, I guess. And so for me, that's even something to recognize that, okay, well, they're also taking on this role that's socially constructed where there's not so much interest in nature, right? And again, we can apply this to any topic. I'm going on a little tangent, but I think you get what I mean. So the idea here is becoming conscious of our explicit roles so we can embody them more fully in ways that are going to be helpful and compassionate to others, not about our own agenda, but about serving the other, right? Being a parent, and I think is a good example of that. We can sort of rule over our kids with an iron fist and bend them to our will, or we can see what they want and respond to their needs and what's happening. And if their behavior needs to be sort of, I guess, recognized as something doing harm to them or someone else, we can approach that with a sense of serving their life and helping to serve the world through helping to cultivate or I guess encourage more healthy human beings. So that's just one example of when we embody our roles, when we take them on consciously, we can actually help others more. The other is recognizing the implicit roles we hold, right? And that's not to take them on and build a big ego around them. It's just to know and how to be more skillful with our emotions. And the last, which I mentioned already, just sort of recapping everything, is this idea of sort of endless autonomy, which isn't true, right? I mean, there's a limit to what we can do as a single person. I'm not saying that should limit you or me in sort of pursuing beneficial things, trying to transform the world in a healthy way. It's just recognizing when we're seeking more and more and more, materially, there's an end to that. Materially, it's not inexhaustible. It will hit a limit. And I think a lot of us struggle with that because we might push something beyond its limit and not be able to accept that limit. So I think our struggle for autonomy is partly that, and our struggle for autonomy also pulls us away from each other. It pulls us away from community. So, I'm trying to recapture this in my life, and it's not easy. Meaning, how can what would serve the communities I'm around as opposed to what I think would serve them, right? Or, not the autonomy of what do I want to do, but what's needed, right? So I think I don't have an answer to that question always, but I think asking the question is really helpful. What's needed? And sometimes what's needed is just being a really simple person, devoting to our family and our local community. And that's powerful, right? So again, back to roles. And I think I'm not saying like in a destiny. I don't believe in destiny. So I'm not saying we're destined for some role or something like that. It just means paying attention. It doesn't mean that can change in 5 or 10 years. Maybe new roles arise and we're able to serve in a different way, right? I mean, a good example of this is a single person moving to becoming a parent, moving to becoming a grandparent, right? Their role changes even within their family. And so, of course, our work changes. Our spiritual roles can also change in how we're serving the world. But I think kind of doing things low key is my whole take. Try to be low key. I think that matters. It matters a lot. And I think as an example to others, it's good to keep it low key. Low key just means like we don't have to have a big brand around what we do necessarily. And I say this with someone who has a YouTube channel and all these things. So again, we still have to interface with the modern world and social media. So this is very tricky. For me, it's very, it's complex at times, but at the same time, it can still be low key, right? And that can mean different things to different people, right? It doesn't always mean one thing, sort of an approach. So anyways, I think I'll leave it there. Yeah. Let me know in the comments if you're watching this on YouTube, or reach out to me if you want to. I always love to hear what people think of all this and sort of your idea roles, and especially this sort of like endless autonomy that we appear to have, which actually can sometimes separate us from our local, low key on the ground activity. So yeah, I would love to hear your thoughts. Okay. Take care, everyone. Thanks.